tax relief or we'll give you little grants. No, I'm sorry, you're sold out. You've lost the farm. You've lost the farm.
Yeah, I think, I spoke to quite a few farmers in Ireland, and they were all of the same mind. Oh, we love the land, we've always done this. This is our life, And I would say to them, but you're not farming anymore. You're filling in paperwork. You're not growing anything. I said, what are your children going to do? What are your sons going to do? Are they farmers? Oh, no. They're working on the building sites, or they're doing computers or something else. So there's no lineage of farming tradition being passed on either. So obviously there aren't going to be farmers in the future anyway.
That's right. See, all that stuff that's second nature to the farmer, he's grown up doing it. Stuff you could cram into whole volumes, like an encyclopedia set. He's taken up for granted because he grew up on the farm. All you need is to break it for one generation and it's gone. You've lost your power to even feed yourself. Something as primal as feeding yourself you have lost. So who's in charge of it now? The big boys who've now got, not have they only got you under their money system, now they've got you under their food rationing system and what kind of food you're going to eat and where from and all the rest of it. This is weaponized. This is part of warfare. Same with the water supply. When you see them going after your food and your water, the most basic things, you're in a war. And you better realize that this is what this is about. This is a war. Because these are the things that kill you off or get you to your knees. You can't allow them to do this.
Yep. They've gone after the air as well, of course. But,
if I'm allowed just to
go on, Brian.
Slip a thing in. Again, I agree with everything that's being discussed about the plan that's underway and control of the food and poisoning of the water. If you come back to your farmers, I'm going to say, well, it's a rhetorical question, but they didn't. I don't think that they met in a pub one day and decided not to grow food. What actually happened was that officials appeared on the scene with paperwork and brochures and attractive offers that if they let so many acres, or refused to use hectare, so many acres were left fallow, then they could start to draw on the European money. So these very big, powerful families, in order to try and take control of the food supply, had to use what I will call the command and control system, which came down through national government, and then it came into the agencies, DEFRA, or whatever its equivalent is in Ireland. And from there, the directives on what should and shouldn't happen and what could and couldn't happen with food production. Then that came in through even local council level until basically the information was brought to the farmers, and then they started to realise, well, we don't have to work so hard because we can just suck off the European money. But the only way that these immensely powerful families could get their plan to interfere with food production working was to actually use people through a whole chain of command within the public sector. And I'm going to say that if I look at a way of destabilising what's happening, we simply, and I use that word deliberately, we simply have to break that command and control structure so that the nonsense and the politics and the directives and the red tape and the legislation, which is all being rained upon farmers, the subject in this case, that we actually break that. We give them an umbrella. Now, when can we do that? Or when can we do this? I think we can do it. We can do it now. Neil was trying to do it some time ago, but the reason it wasn't working was because the farmers weren't hungry enough. And I think that if we're going to do something about what's happening, timing is very, very important, because as we've all learned, if we try and pass the message and get the exposure happening too early, people are too warm, comfortable, well-fed and enjoying their foreign holidays to want to listen. So we need people to become a bit hungrier than they are, and we need them to become a bit more disturbed than they are in order to be fertile ground for our message. But that is approaching very, very quickly. And then the timing issue says that we have to be very, very clever at choosing the moment at which we interfere with these control structures. The moment enough local people refuse to pay their taxes, they are in control of the local authority. The moment enough farmers simply say, no, we're not following the DEFRA guidelines, they are in control. So the control can switch sides very, very quickly, but we have to choose our moment.
You're right, timing, and I think Alan alluded to organisation earlier as well. I think if you're going to, challenge the farmers to kind of stand up and start, doing what their job is basically, and take a bit of responsibility for feeding the public, which that is their tradition through their families and generations.
Yeah, it's a system. It's the very system that got us through the so-called Great Depression. We're in a worse one now, actually, coming up, at least on paper. But there were farms all over the place at one time, and locals could go down to the farms and trade something off and get some food or eggs or whatever. And I'm sure you've got it in Britain, where if you rear your own chickens anymore, now the government inspector comes in to see if you can sell them to the public. And they're closing down all these places across Canada right now, unless you get them government inspected. And that means, by the way, that's not a man coming in the door and wanting to look at your eggs. You have to build him a building that's sterile. And he can come in and have a shower and put on his lovely, lovely white suit and his rubber boots, white rubber boots, and go and inspect your eggs. Well, of course you cannot. It's not meant that you can comply. It's meant that it's impossible for you to comply. You just go under until you have nothing left but the big those huge farm monstrosities they have for the chickens where they can't move more than a foot, This is the agenda. This is all deliberate. It's not by accident. The bee people across Canada, same thing happened with them too. They have to build a building, same idea, hot water, and disinfectant trough that the guy walks through after he's showered and put on his gear, so they can look at your honey. Then you have to buy the spinner to get the honey out of the combs that's got to be made out of stainless steel. Nothing else will do. All the old stuff cannot be used, and it'll cost you multi-thousands to buy that. And then you've got to be on the ball when he comes in and inspects you and so on. I mean, they're putting all the small guys out, and that's the bottom line. Same across the U.S. is happening. So whatever happens, this is what I saw back in the 70s even. I traveled an awful lot across the world, and I'd hear a law getting passed in Britain, and then I'd hear the same law getting passed in Norway a week later, then in Denmark, then in Germany, and then you go across to Australia. And then I realized that each law was coming out in regular news, and you would say, well, that's our news. It's only you never even think it's happening elsewhere. And that's the trick, too, that they use. They don't tell you these are global laws we're passing. They've been doing this since at least the 70s and probably before. Yeah.
Because I was talking to somebody today, and the farmers around here, they're growing wheat and potatoes, as I said, and they've left maybe 4 meters around each field just to grow wild, to grow the wildflowers and stuff to attract the bees. But I could probably count on both hands the amount of bees I've seen this summer. I've not seen one wasp anywhere at all. And going back to the honey, the European Union, I was in Eastern Europe, and I got 25 kilos of honey, and I brought it back. But the legislation is you're only allowed to bring 1 kilo for your own use. And I was speaking to the guys who they produce honey in the back garden, and the guy says to me, I can give you as much as you want, but I can't give you any paperwork. And I says, why not? And he says, because I've got to sell it to this guy down here who's a mafia guy, because they've got all the quotas, and the European Union gave them all the quotas. Yeah. And they have to sell it to them at a certain price, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, there is this myth that the European Union was all about competition and the free trade, and I mean, it's just put shackles on the farmers and, the beekeepers and anybody trying to produce anything, and trade it on an equal basis. There is no level playing field for these guys. And the same goes for like small business. We have the business rates and all the rest of it just going sky high, and all the legislation. I mean, I was in a small cafe in Ireland, and it was the same thing there. They said you have to put stainless steel in, blah blah blah. Until I complained about it, and I refused to do it, and they went away. I mean, when you stand up to them, they don't bother you that much, but people just comply. They just go along with it all. It's incredible, and they wonder how they go out of business.
Yeah, they expect you to adapt and adapt and adapt. And because it's a little bit here and a little bit there, most folk actually do subconsciously. They don't reason through it. They just adapt into it. Hoping, we live in hope. We hope things will get better, or we'll hope that the guys at the top will realize that what they're causing with all this legislation is making it hard for us. We still think, most folks still think that they're decent people at the top, and they've just made a mistake, and they'll fix it when they see it's not working. No, this is a very clever agenda, and they know exactly what they're doing at the top. Yeah. You see, this world of interdependence, Maggie Thatcher went on and on and on about. And interdependence literally means that not only do you have no nation state anymore, it means that you have no independence. Interdependence means you will be dependent for everything you need to survive. Food, shelter, water, clothing, heat. You will be dependent for everything you need to survive and live on this system. That's what it means. That's what interdependence means. That's why they're cracking down on folk in the States who are growing vegetables in their garden in the States, basically. That they're saying you can't do that. You can grow flowers, you can grow dandelions, but you can't grow vegetables. You must be dependent on the system. It's power, and they're going after the most basic things of life.
Yeah, there was a case here recently. I think you might have actually linked it up on your site of the couple down in Dover. I think it was who'd bought the 4 acres. I think it was, and they planted the vegetables. They had their own well. They had their own source of power. And they, of course, the Agenda 21, they couldn't be allowed to do that. I mean, that's an example to everybody of how it can be done. So we can't have the public realising they don't need us. So we had to throw them off the land, put them in council house, and put them on benefits.
Yes.
So I mean, the whole, if you want to go green, and these people wanted to go green, I'm sure they were into that whole ideology without actually realising.
And the thing is, next year, 2012. Is the next part of the big hammer, because the first lot came from the Earth Summit meeting in 1992. So next year is the big one. Maurice Strong, the Rockefellers, as they redesign the whole system and bring part 2 along, which will be completely totalitarian. The first part was it gave all the rights to animals and insects and none to people. None to people. You have no rights in it. And the part 2 is coming along, where they're going after the water, and out of that will come the redistribution of the world's food supply through the United Nations. That's what they've already mentioned that. So your tax money is being thrown across the planet. Your food now will get thrown across the planet, and it doesn't look good. And we've got to stop all this nonsense. As far as I'm concerned, if they keep claiming with all that we're just another animal, then I want the same rights as an animal. I don't see a rabbit here getting told to get off the land. You don't eat that lettuce there. I don't see any animal being told, oh no, you can't sit here and do that, or even poop in your own garden. I mean, they poop anywhere. But the fact is, you see, we have no rights at all. We are so legislated into the ground that we've got to start pushing off, as Brian says, these layers and layers and layers of bureaucracies and government officials that are involved in every aspect of your life. That's what you got to do. You got to start regaining it again. And they're not going to be pleased, and they're not going to be let it go easily either. But we've got to do it. We're talking about survival here.
Absolutely. This is the key bit, talking about survival. And I've got to say that if I go back to my early days, when I saw only I knew only a fraction of what I know now, and I saw only a tiny part of the picture, but I knew that there was something very nasty on its way. And in a couple of my early talks, and I was I'm going to say, misguided enough at that stage to be involved with UKIP in its early days, because